Understanding and using evaluation results. Well, here's some examples. These are just two of how different agencies evaluate their training effectiveness in their results. The first one is with regard to the evaluation methods used at the Department of Commerce. They use the Kirkpatrick approach for their program evaluation, and it is considered their gold standard. They use a 6-point Likert scale in their survey, and they have 3 variations of like and 3 variations of dislike. And that prevents the survey taker from actually taking a neutral position. And they don't have an out this time. They have to provide some sort of an opinion on how that training program was for them. So they have to provide that opinion. They all their courses conduct a level 1, the Smile Sheet. And yeah, there are some studies that say that really, that's pretty good, and it's more substantive than people give it credit for. But Commerce says, no, I don't think so. They continue to evaluate their leadership development programs by surveying their participants and their supervisors 3 to 6 months after each program has been completed. This allows them to get to that level 3. The other thing that they do is alternating years, they actually conduct an extensive triangulation of 3 types of data. They collect qualitative and quantitative data so that one can validate the other. And they do random interviews, they do randomly selected focus groups, they survey the program participants, their first-line supervisors, and their second-level supervisors. And that data that they collect enables them to determine the organizational impact of that training program on the operational side of things. The information is also used to make program improvements, not only in the curriculum but in the organization itself. The other one is a much larger program, and that was the IRS program. It was their Large Business and International Division, LB&I program, and it was with their new hire training design. Their mission, obviously, is to provide top quality service in helping customers understand and meet their tax responsibilities, as well as making sure that they are applying tax laws in a fair and integral way. They want to make sure that it's done evenly across the board. Because the LB&I operational goals is to balance customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and business results, the training effectiveness measures had to be the same. If not, the fundamental objectives of the training would likely skew what their operational goals were. So, what they did is they actually redesigned the new hire training program with an eye towards the business operational goals and their underlying objectives. And this was to make sure that there was a balance. What they ended up doing is, under the new hiring training program, it said, okay, their training program was, okay, new hires they're going to attend this 40-hour training class. Okay, then they're going to attend, a couple weeks later they'll attend this 26-hour. Oh, and then there's going to be this rotation, and oh, there's going to be this. Okay. But they really couldn't tell, and they weren't collecting data of whether or not it was being effective, if that training was effective enough. So what they decided to do is redesign this. It says, upon completion of the new hire training, the employee would be able to perform a quality audit in accordance with the strategic focus. And so now, at the end of their training program, they have to come back and actually do a quality exam. They actually do an exam, and they conduct this quality audit. And they have seven enabling objectives that link back to the business goals. And one has to do with their initial planning of the audit, the actual audit plan itself, the inspection and their fact-finding processes and procedures, the actual application of the tax law and its determination. There is a mid-cycle analysis and proposal and/or resolution submission. There is also an analysis of the work reports and papers themselves. And then they also have one administrative objective, which has to do with the actual procedures on how they do all of that. So all of that now is linked to what their operational and strategic goals are. So they can see through this training, how is it impacting the end result. They actually established a quality measure system so that as they do these audits, they can actually go back and take a look at whether or not the exam itself was fair and was accurate, and that the measures were actually being captured correctly, and whether the questions were right and whether those were the right questions. So they would do a quality check even on the exam process itself. And then they would actually provide those statistics to all of the different levels of the organization. As a result of the quality reviews, guidance is given to management and technical persons for specific steps to take for remedy and improvements in their process and the exam itself for all these new hires. So, I mean, they went through a very lengthy process to redesign their new hiring training program itself. Not just, here's some training programs. No, how does that link to what we really want to have done? And what should it look like? So, back to this. Again, you guys worked really hard in developing this training curriculum. But let's take an example of some of the training effectiveness data that you collect for your courses. I asked for this data as I was preparing for this because I wanted to see what you guys do, and so I can, maybe point out some things that you might be able to do differently. Again, great framework, but how do you know if your training is effective? So, this was one of the first examples that I saw. Can you determine training effectiveness from these types of questions? And I apologize for these, they're a little bit hard to see when you try to put them on slides. But again, was the appropriate amount of time given to the topic? Was there ample opportunity given to ask questions? More going towards effective training versus training effectiveness. What about this one? Can you determine training effectiveness from this type of survey? What are you looking for? Okay, yeah, you're looking for feedback on your speakers, but what do you want to know? Were they good? What module was it? Okay? Satisfied, not satisfied? Oh, and there's also one in the middle, kind of neutral. Everybody's neutral. Everybody's always good. Okay? What about this one? I like this one because you're starting to what extent? Questions posed, and that's the type of questioning you want to do using the Kirkpatrick type of model. But I think you could improve on this because you want to be able to provide participants a place to explain their answers. Open-ended questions, explain why they answered it the way they did. This one, again, this is the last one, and I understand this is the more recent stuff. And again, this is getting even better. It'll help you get to determining training effectiveness. However, it falls just a little bit short. Because again, you need to allow the participants to elaborate on their responses. The qualitative data that you collect is sometimes more important than this little the qualitative data is more important than the quantitative data, because that's where you really get a lot of the meat from how that training was really received. Here's a quote that I found from Albert Einstein that I really think clearly represents the dilemma that most training organizations face when they're trying to collect data to help them try to demonstrate it. Everything that can be counted does not necessarily count, and everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted. It's what we've been talking about. It's a hard thing to do, but it can be done. So, what does the FDA training evaluation data really show? Well, here's what I concluded when I looked at your information. Again, the first example, you can use it to make improvements in that particular training program. Didn't quite collect enough information about the training program itself. In the second one, the questions were kind of limited to the course objectives and the amount of time and so forth. Again, it's more about the content and not the experience itself. Using your 5-point Likert scale, again, creates that bias, allows people to either be really neutral or really favorable, especially when they want to get out of here at the end of the day going, oh, good God, is she ever going to shut up type of thing. You know, you want to be able to make sure that they can really provide you with a response that you can, a good response that you can use. And it appears that, again, those were 4 different types of surveys, and it appeared that you were using different types of surveys for different classes. You may want to think about making sure that you use the same survey for all classes at all levels, because what that'll do is it'll allow you to create that important baseline that as you collect data over time, you can see the improvements over and over and over again. Again, this is kind of what you should do. Just my recommendations. You want to have questions that's going to elicit more information from your participants to really help you determine whether or not that training is effective. Questions should be structured so that they gather data about the level of the knowledge, skills, and abilities before and after the class. And you can do that even in an after-class survey. It's like, okay, coming into this class, you know, how much did you think you know? And let them elaborate on it. Now, after the class, what's different in your knowledge? Questions should be open-ended, and again, giving them space to allow them to elaborate as much as possible. Again, you can kind of, you don't want them to be long-winded, and that's okay. But I mean, give them a decent amount of space to be able to react to it. While most evaluations use odd number of Likert scale answers, again, you may want to think about moving to that even number. Again, like the Commerce does, they use the 3 like and 3 dislike because it really helps you to kind of get to that, you know, an answer, and nobody can really take a neutral position. And then, as I said earlier, standardize your course evaluation across all of your courses and across all your levels, because the more consistent you are over time, that really will help demonstrate your organizational effectiveness as well with your training programs.